We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week by Iowa Democrat Cindy Axne and Congresswoman Axne. We appreciate you joining us.
Hey, always good to be here. Really good to see you too.
So for starters, want to talk about obviously the hot topic in Washington remains and has been for several weeks now, the efforts on the part of the Biden administration as well as Capitol Hill to secure some kind of infrastructure legislation. And as a reminder for folks, we're kind of on a two-track path right now with this bipartisan package still in the works, as well as a reconciliation package that we heard a little bit of detail on this week, but still need to learn a little bit more. We do know that the Senate has produced or is working to produce something in the ballpark of $3.5 trillion. That's a little bit lower from some reports that there were some folks potentially looking at something in the ballpark of $6 trillion. But as that package, potentially moves its way across the Senate floor and is sent to the House, I'm interested in your thoughts on what that bill will need to, perhaps do and maybe even not do in order to gain your potential support.
So there are three things that I'm really looking for in either the infrastructure bill or the reconciliation bill, which really is infrastructure. It just, we're trying to get this done in a couple packages. Broadband, which is included right now in the bipartisan Senate bill, but not at the levels that we need. We had requested $100 billion. That's part of the Rural Broadband Task Force piece of policy that we put together, over a year ago, finished that up. And that needs to be expanded. So I want to see broadband for sure. And I'd like to see it higher because we need it in Iowa. Biofuels, that's one thing that I've been pushing for. Obviously, I want to see some of these infrastructure pieces that I've been working on for ethanol and being able to sell greater blends of it, and some of the other key pieces we've been talking about, tax pieces, et cetera, in these bills. And then the third piece is childcare. I can't tell you how many times I hear that what the biggest issue that we're facing for businesses and for families is childcare. And you can go from Des Moines to Stanton and have lists dozens long for the kids who are waiting. As a matter of fact, it was down in Stanton not too long ago. They have almost 100 child waiting lists for Stanton, Iowa. So we've got to get the Child Care Act together so that our two working parent families, which is literally most of our families here, have a chance to get ahead. So I'm going to be really looking for those three things because in my book, they're really important to Iowa.
Keeping on that theme and on that subject, I want to ask you about some tax issues that are likely to come up and that you could face if this big reconciliation bill makes it to the House. One of them is the issue of stepped up basis. The president proposed to tax capital gains at death, deferring taxes on farms and small businesses. The chairman of the Senate Finance Committee hasn't said if he will go with that proposal, but he's made it pretty clear he's going to go after this issue. He's very concerned about the fact that wealthy people can die without having to pay any tax on that capital gains and just pass it on to their heirs. Is that tell me that issue is about that issue. Can you support a bill that addresses somehow weakens or eliminates stepped up basis?
So what I'm working on is actually putting President Biden's request, which is to defer family farms from the stepped up basis, out of the capital gains tax. And I've been taking the lead on that in the House. It is a bipartisan and I think bicameral issue. I think that we need to make sure that not just, I want to see our farmers be deferred from it, and I'd really like to see small businesses as well, which I'm also trying to work on that end. But my number one priority is our farmers. So the president has said he wants them deferred, and he's absolutely right. My job and our job in Congress is to codify that language then. I feel very confident that that's where we're going. I have been making this a priority. I've been leading on it in the House, letters and of support, to make sure our family farms are deferred. I've been talking to both the administration and the House and Senate leaders, getting some of my peers on board with it as well. As you're probably aware, my colleagues and I wrote a letter in regard to this so that our family farms didn't feel the impact. So I can tell you that's where we sit in the House, where we're wanting to make sure our family farmers are deferred. And I am going to follow the president's lead and work on the language that will help our family farmers continue to be able to pass on their families without the impact of that stepped up basis. Because here's the deal, Phil. We don't want to go after family farms, and nor does the president. What he wants are the Jeff Bezos of the world, who literally have so much money they're going into space while they're disregarding the roads we use that Amazon uses all the time. The airports that need their service, they need to pay their fair share into that. We had 55 huge publicly traded corporations last year pay zero in taxes. I can tell you right now, I don't think there's anybody listening or watching this that paid zero in taxes. So that's really what this is supposed to be going after. Those super rich people, we don't have them in Iowa. Those super rich people that are literally bringing home so much money, they don't know what to do with it, that they're going into space, while we have families who literally are struggling, to make sure that they can afford a good bag of apples as opposed to a crappy bag of chips. So, this is where it's got to stop. And family farms are not, we're going to make sure that they're not hurt by this.
What do you say to those farm groups who tell me that deferring the taxes is not enough, because then you still have a tax liability that's hanging over the land and to the assets if they want to make changes or go out of business, or the family doesn't want to continue it? What do you say to those groups that the deferral still creates a problem?
Well, I would say that given the current language that's on the books, there's plenty of room for those farmers to still be able to reap the rewards and pay very little in capital gains taxes. There is first of all, there's exemptions for, if it's a husband and wife, they have exemptions then for, I think it's $1 million on the home, or there's up to $2 million for that. Then there's further exemptions. So there's really not going to be anybody that, honestly, even if we didn't defer stepped up, this business of it's quite honestly a lie that's out there, this death tax. There's 2 Iowans, I think, that would actually be impacted by any capital gains tax, even if we didn't take this stepped out. But I want it out because that's my promise, and that's we're doing. But honestly, there's no impact, because really there's so many opportunities for write-offs already. That it really is just the very wealthiest who might miss out a little bit. So I'm not real worried about that. It's not going to impact any farmers, and those ads about death tax are not even true.
I'm going to come back to the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure deal. You mentioned a couple of the concerns that you have with the broadband funding, the $65 billion not being, you believe, adequate, and also the lack of biofuel incentives and those energy provisions. Can you still vote for that bill if it's has those broadband provisions that were agreed to and lacks the biofuel provisions? Are you confident that you can get those somewhere in this bigger reconciliation bill?
Yeah, listen, until everything's said and done, I don't really make any decision on where I sit on a bill. I can tell you that I'm happy to see the direction of where things are going. I'm glad to see that there is some bipartisan support in the Senate, because that really truly was one of the biggest hurdles, to get over and get a starting point of where we can actually move forward. So I always wait to see. I can tell you, It depends on the details. Can we come down in things like broadband? Maybe, if there are elements within the policy that maybe allow us to use some less expensive alternatives that still get to the outcome, so maybe some new type of tools and infrastructure that I've talked to some of our rural telcos about, instead of fiber right to the door, if that's not accessible, and that could lower the costs, and then that package would be okay. So those are all the things I look for. If I can get some biofuels in there, fantastic. If I might not be able to get everything, but if we can get something that moves the industry forward, then I'll consider that a big win. So I have to look to see. I'm never somebody that just says, if I don't have all, I'm not going to take anything, because I also don't want to strap Iowans with what they need. But what I can tell everybody for sure is that how I'm loud and proud about what we need here in Iowa, and I intend to keep doing that as this finalizes itself. And I'm going back to DC on Monday for 2 solid weeks of this, and there'll be a lot of opportunity to be face-to-face with people now on these issues.
I want to wrap up talking about a bill that we saw introduced earlier this week from you and a number of other lawmakers on the issue of biofuels. And that, of course, being that bill that would codify the necessary waiver to allow E15 sales in the summer months into law. I know I'm not telling you anything when I say that there is bipartisan support for biofuels and provisions like this. There's also bipartisan opposition. Can you walk us through the politics and whether or not you think your side of this debate is going to be successful in potentially tacking on something like this to a bipartisan infrastructure bill, to a reconciliation package, to basically any moving legislative vehicle between now and the summer of 2022?
Well, the unfortunate thing is that the fossil fuel industry wields a lot of power. Which is really unfortunate, because what that means is that, we're constantly battling their giant lobbying side of things, and all of the support and resources they have, which is way greater than biofuels. We all know that, right? So they have a lot more voices out there in everybody's ear on both the Senate and the House side, president, the administration, whatever. But what we have is a good product. Not just a good product for customers to be able to put in their tanks, but to address our climate issues and protect our environment, and certainly to create jobs across this country. I look at biofuels as an opportunity, not just for states like Iowa and the Midwest. I think about things like, we could be doing cellulosic plants in North Carolina with white pine. We've got so much opportunity to be producing energy through natural resources right here in our own land. And yet we are beholden to outside entities and other countries for fossil fuel. It puts us at a national security risk and increases our costs for our families. So I'm going to do everything we can. I'll tell you why, because it's a good product and it's the right thing to do. And it's what Americans should be able to get. We're a capitalist economy. They want this product. And unfortunately, we have another industry that's trying to keep this product from getting into their hands. So you know what? That just means, again, we're going to have to just be louder about what we do as lawmakers, because we don't have people knocking down doors behind the scenes saying to support it. So, listen, I'm just going to continue to push for this. Certainly, I'd love to see us get this year round. We also have an opportunity for my infrastructure bill. We've got an opportunity for the tax piece. This year round thing, though, is going after language that's out of date. And that's why the Supreme Court they've been ruling not in our favor, because they're using old data that's based on bad old science. And so they're not seeing the product for what it really is. And given that, I understand their rulings, because if they're doing their job based off of what's in front of them on the books, then okay, they're doing their job. So that means now we need to change that language, because it's not up to date. And if that language was, I don't think we would have seen this ruling that way. That's the next thing to do. And when we get those pieces done, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to have something specifically in this bill. If we can get that done, that'll force the hand then of ensuring that we can distribute ethanol nationwide.
So as you mentioned, you and all of your House colleagues headed back to Washington next week for what I can only imagine is a sprint here of a few weeks to that August recess. A lot of things on the agenda in Washington and on Capitol Hill specifically. And Congresswoman Axne, we appreciate you joining us for a little discussion about them.
Well, always a pleasure. And I will be not on recess in August. We'll be out in district. We'll be at the state fair. We'll be we got county fairs and everything going on. So I don't know why they call it that. I call it district work, but I'm so glad to be here.
Well, enjoy the pork chop on a stick and other various goodies at the Iowa State Fair and county fairs. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Congresswoman Axne and Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.